The system did not come at the moment of death. It came at the moment when he had not yet died but already knew that he was dying. Lee Jun-so lay on the scorching asphalt of a Seoul parking lot, looked into the whitish sky from which the blue had long since burned out, and thought of only one thing. How stupid it was to die at 27, from heat stroke 100 meters from a shopping center where the air conditioning works. The thermometer on the building opposite showed 56. The numbers floated before his eyes not from the heat, although from it too. It was simply that his brain was already beginning to shut down in parts, the way lights are turned off in a large building. First the distant floors, then the nearer ones, then the lobby. The last thing he thought was that he should have taken water, then nothing, then the interface. Not a white room, not a voice from the heavens, not a woman in white explaining the rules. Just a rectangle of text on a dark background, as if someone had opened a system notification right in the void between died and has not yet realized that he died. Critical threshold of survival of human civilization, not reached. Initialization of the shelter protocol, overseer assigned. Rollback minus 94 days. Good luck. You will need it. 4 lines, no tutorials. Then a sharp inhale, a hard mattress, a sagging spring on the left, a crack in the ceiling by the ventilation grate. His apartment. His bed. The alarm clock showed 6:12 March 3rd, and outside the window was cold spring Seoul ordinary, alive with the hum of cars and the smell of coffee from the neighboring apartment. Lee Jun-so sat on the bed and did not move for about 3 minutes. Not from shock from the fact that he had to set the priorities correctly right now, in these first 3 minutes, while his head had not yet managed to convince itself that nothing had happened. The memory of his past life sat in him like a splinter, not abstract, but concrete in details. On what date the electricity went out in Seoul, where the last working water supply was, which of the people turned out worse than monsters, and who turned out better than they seemed. He remembered faces. He remembered the names of those he did not save, not because he did not want to, but because he did not know how and when. Now he knew. He got up, walked to the window. March. The street lives as usual, a pensioner with a dog, a schoolgirl with a backpack, a man in a suit hurrying somewhere. No one knows. In 94 days, this asphalt will be melting. In 120, this district will be dead. The system opened by itself quietly in the corner of his vision, as if it had been waiting until he looked out the window with exactly this expression on his face. Shelter system. Overseer. Lee Jun-so. Shelter status not built. Residence 0. Until the beginning of the collapse, 94 days. Resources, current group survival rating, 0%. Task of the Overseer. Ensure the survival of the maximum number of people under conditions of a 3rd-degree climate collapse. The surface temperature by the peak will reach 68 to 72 degrees Celsius. Survival in the open air without protection, no more than 11 minutes. 11 minutes. He remembered that number. In his past life, someone had written it with a marker on the wall of a bunker in Busan, which their group had reached or what was left of it. 11 minutes in the open air at the peak. Then convulsions, then that was all. All right, he said aloud. The voice in the empty apartment sounded strange. The first words in a new life should have been something meaningful, and he said, all right. But it was honest. The system reacted immediately. First task, determine the location of the shelter. Hint, depth of occurrence at least 15 meters. Natural thermal insulation priority. Completion time, 72 hours. Reward, plus 200 construction points. Unlock of first-level blueprints. He already knew where. Not because the system had prompted him, but because in his past life, when he had wandered around Korea for half a year with the remains of the group, they had once found a place that held. An abandoned tunnel under a mountain slope in Gangwon province, an old drainage system of a coal mine, sealed in the 90s. Depth of occurrence over 20 meters, the natural rock held the temperature at around 13 degrees even at the peak. Underground water nearby, the only entrance easy to control. They found it too late. There were 4 of them and 2 did not make it. Now he would make it there in 94 days. Money in the account 2,800,000 won. He withdrew it all on the first morning, in cash, from 3 different ATMs. The cashier at one of them looked at him with slight concern. That is how they look at people who withdraw everything at once. He smiled at her and said that he was going to his parents. She calmed down. He quit the same day briefly without explanations. Foreman Kim said that he was an idiot, throwing away a normal job for who knows what. Lee Jun-so agreed, took his documents, and left. Next, a list. Not in the phone, not in an app. On paper with a pen, because by the peak phones would stop working, and the habit of writing things down on paper is a survival skill, not nostalgia. The list was long and specific. Construction materials, tools, a generator, seeds, medicines, canned food, water filters, electrical equipment, ventilation systems. The system added to each item a priority rating and sometimes clarifications. Ventilation, priority. A. At a surface temperature above 55 degrees Celsius, ordinary ventilation systems do not cope. A geothermal heat exchanger is recommended. Air is run through deep pipes in the rock before being fed inside. Reduces the temperature of incoming air by 28 to 34 degrees. Water. Priority A+. Underground aquifer at a depth of 34 meters from the tunnel level. Manual drilling is impractical. A compact drilling rig is needed. Rental cost, 380,000 won per week. Food supply, priority B. Hydroponics is more effective than standard stockpiles over a period of more than 6 months. LED installations consume less energy. Recommended crops, soy, spinach, sweet potato, mushrooms. He read the system's recommendations and thought, someone had clearly designed this not for one person. The shelter system was not tailored for a loner. It calculated areas for groups, tracked resident status, gave bonus points for accepting survivors. It expected him not to be alone. He knew that. In his past life, he had tried to survive alone for the first 2 months. And that was his main mistake, not cowardice, not weakness, simply wrong arithmetic. One person cannot simultaneously guard, get water, cook food, and fix everything that breaks. One person does not have enough hands. People were needed. The right people were needed. He arrived in Gangwon-do on the 5th day. He found the tunnel quickly. Memory from his past life worked better than any navigator. An old miner's road, overgrown over 30 years so much that without knowing the exact route, it could not be found. The gates of the sealed entrance were rusted but intact. He cut off the lock with an angle grinder. Inside it smelled of stone and old air. The flashlight snatched out concrete vaults, metal supports, drainage grates along the walls. The temperature was 11 degrees. In March outside it was +8. In summer it would be 11 degrees here, while outside it would be 70. The system opened a new window. Location confirmed. Abandoned drainage system of the Taebaek mine, sealed in 1994. Useful volume, 2,400 cubic meters, first level, expansion possible. Suitability rating, 94 out of 100. Disadvantages, single main entrance, risk of blockage, reinforcement of load-bearing structures required in sectors 3 and 7. Unlocked, first level blueprints, plus 200 construction points. He stood in the darkness of the old tunnel, looked at the system interface, and thought about how in his past life they had found this place half dead from the heat, barely able to think. Back then it had seemed like a miracle, accidental, undeserved. Now it was simply the first item on the list. He took out a notebook and began taking measurements. April came hotter than usual. Seoul almost did not notice it. Anomalous spring, the weather forecaster said. Global warming, measures need to be taken. Lee Jun-so read the news in the mornings while he ate, and thought about how in his past life he too had read this news. And had also thought, yes, warming, not good, and went to work. In this life, he went to the construction site. By the end of April, 4 new load-bearing posts were already standing in the tunnel. In sectors 3 and 7, the main water line had been laid from the drilling rig to the central hall, and the system confirmed the presence of an underground source at a depth of 31 meters, 3 meters higher than it itself had calculated. Construction points had accumulated to 840. The system offered to unlock the geothermal circuit 700 points. He spent them without hesitation, but hands still kept running out. One person is 8 to 10 working hours a day, and even with system prompts, the pace was too slow. Ventilation not ready, hydroponics not launched, supplies not gathered. The emergency exit blocked by a cave-in that he had not yet cleared. 52 days remained until the beginning of the collapse. The system gave a diagnosis without being asked. Current construction pace, 61% of what is necessary. Forecast readiness for the collapse, 74%. Recommendation, acceptance of additional residents with professional competencies. He closed the interface and opened the phone. The first name in the contact list that he opened was not a friend, not a relative. An advertisement on a construction forum that he had posted 3 weeks ago. Ventilation system specialist required for a non-standard facility. Long-term contract. Housing provided. Payment in cash. 7 replies came. 6 standard ones. The 7th was strange. Short, without a resume, one line, "I know how to work with my hands and I do not ask unnecessary questions. When should I arrive?" He reread this advertisement, then wrote back the address. Choi Da-yoon arrived the next day with a backpack, a welding case, and the expression of a person who has nothing to lose, but is completely fine with that. 25 years old. Short hair dyed in 2 colors, black at the roots, red at the ends. Machine oil under the nails that no soap could wash off completely. She looked around the tunnel, raised the flashlight to the vault, knocked on the support post. "Working alone?" she asked. "Yes, not bad. Here the post stands at the wrong angle, 3 degrees. It may seem like a trifle, but under load shift." She shrugged. Easy enough to fix. He looked at her. She did not ask why he was building a bunker under a mountain, did not ask why he was paying cash, did not ask how many people the facility was calculated for. She simply came and started working. The system highlighted her name in green. New resident Choi Da-yoon. Specialization, mechanics, welding, life support systems. Value rating for the shelter, A bonus, plus 150 construction points. He showed her room, small, concrete, with a folding cot and a lantern. She put down the backpack, hung the welding case on a hook, and turned around. "When do we start?" "Right now." "Good." She pulled a measuring tape from her pocket. "Show me where the ventilation circuit is." Lee Jun-so showed her. They worked until 2 in the morning. An So-yeon appeared on the 26th day through another channel. Not through the advertisement, through an acquaintance who knew nothing except that some guy is building something serious in the mountains and is looking for a medic. The acquaintance passed So-yeon his number. So-yeon called at 8 in the evening without warning. "Are you looking for a medic for a bunker? How do you know it is a bunker?" Pause. Because normal people do not pay cash for a long-term contract in the mountains, and do not demand not to ask unnecessary questions. It is either a bunker or something illegal. You do not look like a person engaged in something illegal. Her voice was even slightly dry. Intelligent. "Medical education?" he asked. 7 years of surgical practice at Seoul National, 2 years in field medicine on volunteer projects in Myanmar. Surgery, resuscitation, work under conditions of limited resources. Pause. "I think you are building it because you know something that others do not know. And I think you are right. Something will happen this summer." He fell silent for a second. "Why such a conclusion?" "I am a surgeon. I read data, climate models, CO2 levels, temperature anomalies of the last 3 years. The mathematics is not comforting." Her voice did not change. "I just want to survive, and help others survive. If you have space, I am coming. You have space, I am." The system remained silent. Did not give an assessment immediately, simply waited for his decision. "There is space," he said. So-yeon arrived 2 days later. 30 years old, tall, hair tied back, the look of a person used to assessing a situation quickly. She walked through the tunnel, inspected everything methodically, went into every section. Then she returned to him and said, "You need a medical block of at least 20 square meters, separate ventilation to prevent cross-infection, a stock of broad-spectrum antibiotics for half a year, a surgical kit, and this is important operating lighting that does not depend on the main generator. Will you make a list?" Already making one. She pulled out a paper notebook, exactly the same format as his own, and began to write. Da-yoon came out of her section, looked at the new neighbor. So-yeon raised her eyes. For several seconds, they simply studied each other. "Da-yoon mechanics," said Da-yoon. "So-yeon medicine." "There is only one shower here for now," Da-yoon informed her. "I will survive, and folding cots, I have slept on worse." Da-yoon gave a slight nod. Acceptance protocol passed. Lee Jun-so looked at both of them and thought about how in his past life he had had neither a medic nor a mechanic. There had been himself, 2 strangers from the street, and a woman who knew how to shoot a bow. They held out for 2 months. 2 months against what he was building now. May brought the first real heat. 38 degrees in Seoul, a record for May in the entire history of observations. The news said anomaly, El Niño, temporary phenomenon. The weather forecasters made charts. Officials promised to take measures. Lee Jun-so brought the third batch of canned food and 50 liters of vegetable oil into the tunnel. The system updated the progress. Until the collapse, 31 days. Shelter readiness, 79%. Critical unresolved positions. Emergency exit, blocked. Water reserves, 63% of the norm. Agricultural block, not launched. He unblocked the emergency exit himself 3 days with a jackhammer and his hands until the collapse gave way. Water came more slowly, the pump worked, but the productivity was lower than calculated. The rock turned out to be denser than the map showed. The agricultural block required an agronomist. This time he posted the advertisement differently, more specifically, because no time remained. Hydroponics, cultivation in enclosed spaces, closed systems, urgent. Gangwon-do, housing, food, safety. He added the word safety intentionally. On the third day, one reply came. The text was long, not a resume, but something closer to a confession. 23 years old, agrarian faculty of Chonam, specialization in hydroponics and urban farming, work in 3 startups, all 3 closed down. I see that this is not just a job. I understand why you are building this. I will not ask how you know what you know. Just take me. I know how to grow food out of air and water, and this will soon become more important than everything else in the world. Park Mi-rae arrived with 2 boxes of seeds, seedlings in small pots, and a cat in a carrier. The cat is a condition, she said, getting out of the car. Fine. His name is photosynthesis. Pause. Fine, he repeated. The cat turned out to be gray, large, and philosophically inclined. It inspected the tunnel, found the warmest section, and lay down there, no longer taking interest in anything else. Mi-rae was small, 158 centimeters, with a braid down to her waist and a habit of talking to plants. He learned about this on the very first evening, when he was walking past the agricultural section and heard, "You will manage, do not worry. The soil here is good, I can feel it." She was talking to spinach seedlings. Da-eun, walking past with a wrench, stopped, looked at Mi-rae, then at Lee Jun-so, then at Mi-rae again. "Is she normal?" she asked under her breath. "Her yield is 40% above average," he answered. "Good," said Da-eun and walked on. So-yeon appeared in the doorway of the agricultural section, looked at Mi-rae, who was quietly saying something to a sweet potato, and said, "I read that talking to plants has a statistically significant effect on growth." CO2 and exhaled breath. Mi-rae raised her head and looked at her with the expression with which one looks at a person who understood something important, but incorrectly. "Not only CO2, she said seriously. So-yeon wanted to object, but remained silent with the look of a person who had decided that this conversation was not worth the energy expenditure. Lee Jun-so wrote into the notebook, "Mi-rae's agricultural block works. 22 days before the collapse, there were 3 residents in the shelter, 78% readiness, and a problem that the system marked in a separate red line. External threat. Signs of organized looter activity detected within a radius of 40 kilometers. Group Soln Sepyok, presumably 30 to 40 people. Specialization, seizure of water sources and food supplies. Threat level, high. Soln Sepyok." He knew that name. In his past life, they met people with such a sign, a white circle on black, burned onto jackets 4 months after the beginning of the collapse. Those who managed to seize water sources in the first weeks became the new authority. Not cruel at once at first, simply give water, get protection. Then the terms began to change. By the moment it became clear that this was not protection, but slavery, there was nowhere to go. He made a note in the notebook, then opened a new advertisement, the last of those he had planned to place. The text was short. Looking for a person with combat experience, security of a facility, mountains of Gangwon, long-term, terms in person. The next morning, one reply came. Kim Yoo-jin wrote briefly, the way people accustomed to briefings write. 3 years in the 7th Airborne Brigade, sniper training, discharged by own request, will arrive on Wednesday. Not I can arrive, not I will consider the offer, simply will arrive on Wednesday. The system remained silent, but construction points were added before he had time to answer. Plus 180 points. The shelter was almost ready. Outside the window of the Seoul apartment, which he rented as a temporary address, the thermometer showed 41 degrees. May record after record. The news said anomaly. Lee Jun-so closed the laptop, packed his backpack, and went back to the mountains. Wednesday in 2 days, and the collapse in 22. Wednesday began with the pump breaking. Not critical a gasket, 40 minutes of work, but at exactly the moment when Da-un was lying under the pump unit with a wrench and obscenely explaining to the gasket its place in the world. Gravel crunched outside. Lee Jun-so stood at the entrance and watched as an SUV came up the old miners' road battered, without identifying marks, with extra canisters on the roof. The vehicle stopped 30 meters away. The engine fell silent. The driver's door opened. Kim Yoo-jin turned out not to be the way he had imagined her from the text of the advertisement, although he had not imagined anything specific. 28 years old, of average height, movement solid and economical, like those of a person used not to wasting anything extra, neither energy nor words. Hair pulled back tightly without a single strand out of place. A tactical backpack on her shoulder, a knife on her belt, positioned so that it would not interfere but would remain accessible. She examined the entrance to the tunnel. Then him. "One entrance," she said instead of greeting. "That is a problem. There is an emergency exit. Northern slope, 120 meters, camouflage discreet. Show me." Not, "Show me, please." Simply, "Show me." Lee Jun-so showed her. She walked the entire route from the emergency exit to the central hall, counted steps, checked the ceiling, poked at the walls not chaotically, methodically. In the agricultural block, she stopped. Mireille was just talking to cucumbers. "What is this?" Yoo-jin asked. "Agronomist," said Lee Jun-so. "She is talking to a cucumber. Yield 40% above average." Yoo-jin looked at Mireille for one more second. Then forward, farther through the tunnel. In the medical block, So-yeon stood with her back turned, sorting instruments. She heard footsteps, turned around. Her gaze ran over Yoo-jin quickly, professionally. Height, weight, posture, knife on the belt. "Medic," said So-yeon. "Sniper," answered Yoo-jin. "Injuries?" "No." "Chronic conditions?" "No." "Good." So-yeon returned to the instruments. "You can take a first aid kit from the third drawer on the left, in case there are any." Yoo-jin looked at the third drawer on the left, then at So-yeon. Something in her face shifted, did not warm, but became slightly less neutral. "Fine," she said. In the central hall she stopped, looked around everything once more. Ceiling, walls, 3 corridors branching from the center. The map on the wall, he had drawn it by hand. All levels, all sections. "How many people are you planning for?" she asked. 4 for now, maybe more. In the event of an attack from outside, 4 people minimum for the defense of 2 points at the same time. Pause, "But you have no firearms." "Not yet." "Not yet is when?" "That depends on a number of factors," he said. Yoo-jin looked at him with the expression of a person used to concrete deadlines and concrete conditions. "I can get some," she said. 2 hunting carbines, legally. Plus a crossbow it is quiet, which matters more than it seems. Do it." The system quietly updated. New resident, Kim Yoo-jin. Specialization, combat training, sniping, small group tactics. Value rating for the shelter, a plus. Bonus, plus 180 construction points. Shelter readiness, 84%. Da-yoon came out of the pump section, hands in oil. Satisfaction on her face from what had been repaired saw Yoo-jin and stopped. "You are a sniper?" she asked. "Yes." "Good." Da-un nodded. "I'm Da-un, mechanics. 1 shower, schedule by time. In the morning. So-yeon gets up first. Food is shared. We cook in turns." "Questions?" Yoo-jin looked at her for a second. "No." "Then welcome," said Da-un and went back. Yoo-jin watched her go with her eyes, then looked at Lee Jun-so. "Do they know what is going to happen?" "They suspect, but do not know exactly?" "No, and you know, it was not a question." He did not answer. Yoo-jin looked at him for some time without pressure, simply studying him, then dropped her backpack by the wall of the central hall. "Show me the perimeter. I want to know the radius of view from all points." 18 days before the collapse, the temperature in Seoul crossed 45 for the first time. The news stopped calling it an anomaly and began calling it a crisis. The government declared a state of emergency, opened cooling centers in shopping complexes. Hospitals were working overloaded. The power grid flickered from the load of air conditioners. In the mountains, it was 32. Lee Jun-so looked at the weather forecast every morning like a ritual and thought that people in the city still believed. This was temporary, it would pass. The government would cope. He himself had thought so in his past life. Until July, when it did not pass. The system gave a new notification. External threat. Sepyok is expanding its zone of control. Movement of a group has been detected in the direction of the mountain region. Presumed target, the Taebaek water sources. Until the collapse, 18 days. Recommendation, strengthen the camouflage of the entrance. Install an early warning system on the approaches. Yujin read the printout. He had long since started printing out critical system notifications and giving them to everyone without explaining where the information came from. Simply received data from a reliable source. Sepyok, she said. I have heard of them. In Wanju, they seized 3 wells, posted guards, started trading water. Pause. At first, they traded honestly. At first, he agreed. What after that? Then the terms will change. She looked at him. You speak again as if you know. The logic of such groups is predictable. Yujin nodded slowly with the look of a person who had accepted the answer but marked it separately. Early warning system, she said. I have ideas. We need motion sensors, 3 or 4 of them, and a thin wire on the approaches. Not for detention, for a signal. Plus an observation point on the upper ridge. From there, the road is visible for 3 kilometers ahead. Do it. I need help with the installation. Da-un will do. They went out the next morning, Yujin with tools, Da-un with a backpack of spare parts. Mireille asked to go with them. She wanted to see whether there were any edible plants on the slope. Yujin looked at her. Do not fall behind, she finally said. Okay. Mireille grabbed a small backpack. I am fast. You are slow, Yujin corrected. I am normal. Mireille wanted to object, but Da-un was already pushing her forward. Come on, do not argue with a person with a knife. Lee Jun-so watched them go down the slope. Then he went back inside. So-yeon sat in the medical block with a tablet reading something, with the dense expression of a person who does not like what she is reading. Look, she said without raising her eyes. New climate data has been posted. The model predicts a peak temperature in the range of 62 to 68 degrees for the central regions of the Korean peninsula. Pause. This is not a crisis. This is the end of infrastructure. I know. She raised her eyes. This is not a reliable source, is it? The place you get the data from. Her voice was even without accusation. You knew this before this data came out. He was silent. So-yeon looked at him for a second, then returned to the tablet. I am not asking for explanations. I am a surgeon. I work with what is, not with what I would like to see. A short pause. But I want to say one thing. Those 94 days that you spent on this place, they matter. For all of us. That I know for sure. He looked at her. So-yeon did not look back, kept reading, with the same dense expression. Thank you, he said. You are welcome. She turned the page. And Jun-so. The stock of painkillers needs to be doubled. Heat injuries are painful. 14 days before the collapse, Sepyok first appeared on the road. Yujin spotted them from the observation ridge at 6 in the morning. 3 cars moving slowly, studying the terrain. Not a combat raid. Reconnaissance. She came down without hurrying, entered the central hall. Lee Jun-so was already there. The sensor on the ridge had sent a signal to his phone at 5:58. 3 cars, she said. 8 to 10 people. Armed but not aggressively. Their weapons are put away. Studying the map, looking at the road to the mine. Pause. They do not know about us yet. But in a day or 2 they will. The old road? The traces are ours, we did not cover them well enough. Dae-yoon in the corner raised her head from the ventilation diagram. So what do? We camouflage the entrance, said Lee Jun-so. Completely. Today, it will take all day. I know. Yujin was already looking at him with that special expression, not surprise, not suspicion, something in between. Do you have a plan in case they still find us before the collapse? I do. Can I hear it? Do not enter into conflict ahead of time, if they come negotiations. We are not a threat to them while the collapse has not begun. We have no water for sale, no supplies that they need right now. And after the collapse? He was silent for a moment. After that is a different conversation. Yujin nodded. Not because she fully agreed, but because she accepted it as a working plan. They camouflaged the entrance all day, cut down young fir trees on the slope above, laid them across the road imitating an old blockage, covered it with gravel, set Mireille to scatter seeds of fast-growing grass over the fresh earth. Mireille worked with enthusiasm. "This will spread in 3 weeks," she said, carefully laying out the seeds. "Wild clover will grow here, plantain here. This is unpretentious and fast. By that time, this place will look like an untouched slope." "In 3 weeks, it will already begin," said Da-eun. "All the better that I do this now." Da-eun looked at her. Then at Lee Jun-so. Then back at the neat rows of seeds that Mireille was laying out with the same care with which she spoke to cucumbers. "Is she definitely normal?" Da-eun asked quietly. "Yes," he said. "I just want to make sure." By evening, the entrance was camouflaged so that from the road below it could not be seen at all. Yujin walked the route of a scout from below upward, the way outsiders would go, and returned with a short, "It will do." From Yujin, "it will do" meant good. That same evening, something happened that he had not planned. They were having dinner together for the first time, all four at one table, without work talk. Mireille cooked something from canned food and fresh greens from the agricultural block. Da-eun said tasty, which was her highest culinary praise. So-yeon ate without taking her eyes off the tablet. Yujin ate methodically and silently. Photosynthesis came, sat in the middle of the table, and looked at everyone in turn. "He wants to eat," said Mireille. "He has his own bowl," said Da-eun. "He wants to eat here." "This is unsanitary. This is photosynthesis. This is a cat." "This is photosynthesis," Mireille repeated with a tone that allowed no objections. Da-eun opened her mouth, then looked at the cat. The cat looked at her with an expression of complete indifference to her opinion. "All right," said Da-eun. Yujin watched this exchange with a neutral face, then shifted her gaze to Lee Jun-so slightly to the side of him, as if studying a point behind his shoulder, but he could feel it. On him. "Jun-so see," she suddenly said. "Yes?" "Why exactly us?" "What us?" "There are 4 of us." She swept her gaze around the table. "Mechanic, medic, agronomist, combat unit. You did not choose us by chance. You knew who was needed." Mireille raised her head from the plate with interest. So-yeon set the tablet aside. Da-eun stopped chewing. All 4 were looking at him. Lee Jun-so swept his gaze around the table. Tired, intelligent, living faces in the light of the emergency lantern. The tunnel hummed softly, the ventilation was working evenly. Da-eun had adjusted it 3 days earlier. "Because each of you is necessary," he finally said. "Not as labor, as people without whom this place has no meaning." Silence. Mireille looked at him with the expression with which she usually looked at seedlings before a good harvest, warm and a little solemn. So-yeon lowered her eyes slightly, a small movement, almost imperceptible. Da-eun snorted quietly, but not displeased. Yujin looked straight at him, stayed silent longer than the others. "Good," she finally said. "Only that." But afterward, even he was not sure that he had not imagined it. Her gaze lingered on him for a second longer than needed for a simple answer. Photosynthesis nudged his hand with his nose. "He has recognized you," Mireille announced solemnly. "That is a good sign." "It is a cat," said Da-eun. "This is photosynthesis," Mireille and. To general amazement, So-yeon answered in chorus. Da-eun stared at So-yeon. She took the tablet back with the look of a person who had said nothing. 3 days before the collapse, Seoul and Sepyeok found them. Not the entrance themselves. Yujin and Mireille were returning from the upper slope, where they had been gathering wild plants Mireille wanted samples for sowing. 2 cars came out from the lower road unexpectedly, blocking the path. 3 men got out of the first one. The leader, tall with that white circle on his jacket, raised a hand in a stop gesture. His voice was friendly. Lee Jun-so trusted such voices least of all. "Hello," he said. "We are from Sont Sepyeok. We are studying the area the heat is intensifying. We are looking for safe places for people. Are you locals?" Yujin was silent. Mireille pressed the backpack with the samples to herself. "Tourists," said Yujin shortly. "In this heat? I love nature." The leader smiled a little wider than necessary. "Nice place? Quiet. We have a base nearby if the heat gets worse. We have water, food. You are welcome." Pause. "If of course you have nothing to hide." The last phrase was said in the same friendly tone. Yujin looked at him straight without emotion, then took Mirai by the wrist. "Thank you. Good luck." She went around the car, not hurriedly, not defiantly, simply walked past. Mirai walked beside her, clutching the backpack. The leader watched them go. When they reached the entrance and closed the camouflage shield behind them, Yujin stopped, leaned against the wall, and for the first time in Lee Junso's memory, exhaled the way people exhale who have been holding themselves in. "They remembered our faces," she said. "I know, we have 3 days." 2. He looked at the system. 51 hours remained until the collapse. In 2 days, they will have no time for us. Mirai stood beside him, pale but not confused. "Are they bad people?" she asked quietly. "They will be," he said. She nodded slowly with that serious expression that sometimes appeared over all her softness. "Then it is good that we are here," she said. Dayun came out of the corridor, heard the last words. "What happened?" "Son Sepyok found us," said Yujin. Dayun was silent for a second. "I reinforced the pump," she then said, "in case we have to stay inside for a long time." Lee Junso looked at her. She shrugged. "I expected that something would go wrong. Something always goes wrong." The collapse began at 4 in the morning. Not with an explosion, with silence. That special silence when something stops humming, that had always hummed, and to which you had become so used that you stopped noticing it. The power grid. Lee Junso woke up 20 minutes before that. He always woke up earlier when he knew what was coming. Got up, got dressed, went out into the central hall. The generator started automatically. Da-un had set auto start in case of a power outage a week earlier. The light did not flicker. The ventilation did not stop. The pump kept working. He opened the external temperature sensor, a small device brought to the surface through a thin cable. Outside it was 48, at 4 in the morning. He looked at that number for a long time, then closed it. The system gave a notification. 3rd-degree climate collapse initiated. Predicted time until peak values, 14 to 18 days. Shelter, active mode. Readiness, 91%. Residence, 4. Group survival rating, 78%. 78%. In his past life, there had been nothing. He sat down on the floor of the central hall, leaned against the wall. The tunnel hummed evenly around him. Somewhere in the living section, photosynthesis was purring softly. In an hour, the others will begin waking up. So yawned first, she always got up earlier. Then Yujin, then Da-un. Mirai last, but she will get up at once and go check the agricultural block, because in a crisis, she instinctively went to the plants. He already knew them. Not so deeply, not so long, but he knew them. Beyond the shelter door, the end of the familiar world was beginning. Inside were 4 people whom he had chosen, who had chosen to stay. Lee Junso closed his eyes. Outside, 50 degrees at dawn. Ahead was everything else. On the 3rd day of the collapse, they began knocking outside. Not aggressively the way people knock when they have run out of options. With palms, not fists. First once during the night, then several times. The external microphone transmitted the sound into the central hall muffled, as if through water. A knock, a pause, another knock. Sometimes a voice. Sometimes just breathing, short and rapid, like that of a person who had run all the way. Outside it was 56. Lee Junso sat by the monitor and listened. Did not open, simply listened. On the 4th day, Mirai could not take it anymore. She came to him in the central hall, not with a question, with a fact. Stood in front of him, crossed her arms, which for her was a gesture of utmost seriousness. "There are people there. I know. They will die outside. I know. Then why are we not opening?" He looked at her. Mirai with a straight back and ears pressed down, she was angry, and anger made her completely unlike a person who talked to cucumbers. "Because there are 4 of us," he said. "Food for 90 days for 4? For 660? For 1036? In 36 days, we die together with those whom we let in." Mirai was silent. "The agricultural block will reach a stable harvest in 3 weeks," he continued. "Then the resources will change. Until then, every new person reduces everyone's chances." "But you will let someone in?" "Yes." "Whom?" He was silent for a moment. "Those who increase the group's chances, not reduce them. Those who have something needed." Mirai looked at him for a long time with the expression with which one looks at mathematics that is correct, but still not liked. "It is cruel," she finally said. "Yes, but you are right. Yes." She turned and left. Photosynthesis came out after her, throwing Lee Junso a look that was hard to interpret otherwise than as, "She is right, you are also right. This is hard." And that was too much wisdom for a cat. But he was photosynthesis. He was allowed. So-yeon appeared in the doorway a minute later. She had heard the conversation. She is angry not at the logic, said So-yeon. She is angry at the necessity of that logic. I know, those are different things. I know. So-yeon looked at him for several seconds with that evaluating gaze of hers that read, people like data. It is hard for you too, she said quietly. Do not think I do not see it. He did not answer. She did not wait for an answer, simply nodded and went back to the medical block. On the 5th day, they knocked outside differently, not with palms. With a fist, rhythmically, 3 knocks. Pause, 3 knocks, like a signal. Yoojin was already by the monitor. She slept little and heard things earlier than the others. This is not a random person, she said. No, he agreed. They exchanged glances, then he pressed the button of the external speaker. Who is there? Silence for 3 seconds. Then a voice, hoarse from the heat, but steady. My name is Jong Woo-jin, former firefighter. I am alone. I have fuel canisters, 4 of them, 20 liters each. I walked here for 3 days. I know there is a shelter here. I saw the camouflaged entrance a week ago by chance. I told no one anything. Pause. I do not need charity. I need an exchange. Yoojin looked at the monitor. 80 liters of fuel is another month for the generator. I know. Are you letting him in? Look at him. The external camera gave an unclear image thermal, not optical, because outside right now it was 58, and an ordinary camera did not last long. Thermal outline. 1 person, of average height, standing straight. 4 canisters beside him. No one behind him within the viewing radius. Alone, Yoojin confirmed. Firefighter, he added. Knows how to work in extreme conditions. Knows how to handle fire and smoke. In case of an attack by Sonsepyeok. Useful, Yoojin finished. The system gave a hint quietly. Acceptance recommended. Increase in group survival rating plus 4%. I am opening, said Lee Jun-so. Jang Woo-jin entered with the canisters, and a 2nd-degree burn on his forearm got it on the way, when he stumbled and for a second touched a metal railing under the open sun. So-yeon treated it silently, professionally. Woo-jin did not wince. 32 years old, square-built, taciturn. Inspected the shelter with the look of a person evaluating the fire safety of a facility. Found 3 potential problems and told Da-eun about them within the first hour. Da-eun listened with a pencil in her hand, making notes. Sensible, she said. For Da-eun, that was the equivalent of a ceremonial welcome. Mireille brought him tea herbal from her own supplies and set it beside him without words. He looked at the mug, then at her. Thank you, he said. You walked for 3 days in such heat, she said simply. You deserved tea. Woo-jin did not answer anything, but he drank all the tea. On the 7th day, they knocked outside again, and this time, Lee Jun-so looked at the monitor for a few seconds longer than usual. Because on the thermal camera, there were 2. A small figure and a very small one beside it. A woman with a child. The system remained silent, gave no recommendation. So-yeon entered the central hall. She had heard the sound from the medical block. Looked at the monitor. Looked at him. Jun-so, she said quietly. I see. A child. I see. A pause, long, heavy. Resources, he said. Not as an objection, as a fact that had to be named. I know about the resources. So-yeon looked at him straight, without accusation, but with an expression he had not seen on her before. Not evaluating, simply human. A child, she repeated. He looked at the monitor. A small thermal outline beside a large one. Outside 59 degrees. Without shelter, 11 minutes. He pressed the speaker button. Who are you? The woman's voice was tired, but not broken. Kwon Hirim. Pediatric nurse. My son is with me, 6 years old. We are from Wonju. We walked for 2 days. I heard that there are people in the mountains. Pause. I know how to work. Anything at all. Just take him. So-yeon was already walking to the entrance airlock. Lee Jun-so did not stop her. The system updated a minute later. New residents. Kwon Hai-rim. Specialization. Pediatrics. Care. Kwon Mi-nu, 6 years old. Group survival rating, 81%, 81%. It rose. He looked at that number and thought that the system sometimes counts things that do not yield to calculation. Sonsepyeok came on the 9th day. Not secretly, openly. 2 cars stopped by the lower road, and the leader with the white circle on his jacket got out alone, without a weapon in his hands, with the same friendly voice. We know you are here. He said into the open space he did not know where the camera was, but spoke loudly for those listening. "We are not enemies. We came to talk." Yu Jin stood by the monitor beside Lee Jun-so. "They are lying," she said quietly. "Partially," he corrected. "What does partially mean?" "They really do want to talk, and they really are not enemies right now. Attacking is unprofitable. They do not know how many of us there are and what we are armed with." He looked at the camera. "Negotiations mean reconnaissance. Are you going out?" "Yes, alone? You cover from above." Yu Jin had already taken the carbine. Lee Jun-so went out through the side exit, not through the main one, through the one that opened onto a rocky ledge above the road. Tactical advantage, he could see them, they could see him, but from below upward. The leader of Sont Sep Yok raised his eyes. Smiled. "Smart," he said. "My name is Seo Dong-hyun. Have you heard of us?" "I have." "Then you know we provide water and food to everyone who joins. In exchange work, protection, resources, honest exchange." "Honest for now," said Lee Jun-so. Seo Dong-hyun did not change expression. "We are a stable structure. Places like yours are becoming fewer. Loners do not survive. We are not loners, all the more reason not to take risks. Join with us and your shelter will become part of the network. Protection, resources, people. Terms? Dong-hyun was silent for a second, exactly as long as needed to decide how much truth to tell. Your resources enter the common pool. Decisions are made centrally. Your group receives rations according to contribution. So our shelter becomes yours. Common. It is the same thing." Dong-hyun looked at him from below upward. The smile became slightly less friendly, not threatening, simply more honest. "You are a smart man," he said. "Smart people understand when it is more profitable to come to an agreement." "I understand," said Lee Jun-so. "Therefore my answer is no." Pause. "Not now. Later you will change your mind." "Possibly. If the terms change." "The terms will not change." Dong-hyun stepped back, not aggressively, ending the conversation. "But you will change your mind. They always do." He returned to the car. The cars drove away. Yu Jin came down from the ridge 5 minutes later silently, the way she knew how. "He did not threaten openly," she said. "Not yet. They need to understand our strength. While they do not understand, they do not attack. When will they understand?" "In about 5 days. Reconnaissance will happen at night, most likely." Yu Jin nodded businesslike, without unnecessary words. Then, "You did not tell me that you were going out alone. You were covering from above. I mean, you did not warn me." He looked at her. There was no anger in her voice, something else which she did not name. "Next time I will warn you," he said. Yu Jin looked at him for a second, then lowered the carbine. "Good," she said and went inside. That same evening, the first happened. They were having dinner now, 7 of them, plus Minu, who ate quickly and silently, the way children eat who have already managed to understand that food will not always be there. Hyerim sat beside him, watched him. Soyeon sometimes glanced at them with that professional gaze with which pediatricians and pediatric nurses look at children without permission. Mireille was talking about the first sprouts in the agricultural block as always, with details that no one needed, but everyone listened anyway, because her voice was the sound that held the feeling of normality. "The spinach is already 3 centimeters, she said. "The sweet potato is slower, but I sing different music to it. It responds better to low frequencies. I read a study." "You sing to sweet potato," said Da-eun. "I sing for sweet potato." "Are those different things?" "To sweet potato, yes. Tone matters to it, not the addressee." Da-eun opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Lee Jun-so with the look of a person seeking confirmation that he had heard it too. He nodded. Da-eun bent over her plate with the expression of a person who had accepted the world as it is. Woojin ate methodically. He always ate methodically, the way he did everything else. Minu looked at him and suddenly asked, "Are you a firefighter?" Woojin raised his eyes. "I was. Did you put out big fires?" "Yes, how big?" "Entire buildings." Minu considered this with the seriousness of a 6-year-old person. "That is cool." Woojin said nothing, but something in his face shifted not much, barely noticeable. Lee Jun-so looked at the table. 7 people, no. 8 with Minu. Mechanic, medic, agronomist, sniper, firefighter, pediatric nurse, child, and himself. A month ago, he had been alone in this tunnel with a measuring tape and bitter coffee in a thermos. Jun So-si, So-yeon said. He turned around. She looked at him across the table calmly with that delicacy that in her was not softness but precision. She always knew how much to say. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For today. For Dong-hyun. Pause. For not opening the door alone without warning next time. Yoo-jin, sitting opposite So-yeon, raised her eyes from her plate, looked at So-yeon, then at him. Something in her gaze changed for a fraction of a second, then became neutral again. Mireille noticed it. Lee Jun-so saw the corners of her lips lift slightly, but she said nothing. She simply picked up her mug. Sweet potato, she said thoughtfully, addressing no one in particular. Tomorrow I will sing something slower to it. No, Daeun and Yoo-jin said at the same time. Mireille looked at both of them in surprise. You do not know what sweet potato likes. No one knows what sweet potato likes, said Daeun. That is exactly why experiments are needed. Woo-jin quietly stood up, took his plate, and left with the look of a person who had decided that this conversation would be long. Minu looked after him, then at Mireille. Can I listen to you singing to Sweet Potato too? Mireille beamed. Of course, tomorrow morning, all right? All right, Minu said seriously. Hyerim closed her eyes for a second with the expression people have when something very simple reminds them that they are alive. On the night at the end of the 9th day, Lee Jun-so was not sleeping. Not from anxiety from the fact that he could not switch his head off. He lay in his compartment, looked at the ceiling, listened to the ventilation humming. Outside 61 degrees. The sensor showed it. The peak had not yet come. Footsteps in the corridor light, almost soundless. Yoo-jin. She was going to the observation post. It was her night shift. She always took it herself, without waiting for the schedule. She was walking past his compartment. The door was slightly open. She stopped. He did not move. You are not sleeping, she said. Not a question. No. Pause. She stood in the doorway, a dark silhouette, the carbine over her shoulder. He could not see her face in the darkness, only the outline. So-yeon speaks well, she finally said. She does. Yes, you noticed. Noticed what? That she speaks well. Lee Jun-so was silent for a second. Yoo-jin. What? Go to your post. A long pause. I am going, she said. The footsteps went away down the corridor. He lay there looking at the ceiling. The system remained silent, which was reasonable on some things. The system had no recommendations. Outside 61 degrees, and that was not yet the peak. Son Sepiok would return in 5 days with reconnaissance. He knew that exactly. The shelter was holding 8 people inside and 1 cat, whose name was Photosynthesis. For now enough. Solon Sepiok's reconnaissance came on the 12th night, not in 5 days and 7. They waited longer than he had expected, and that itself was information. Dong-hyun was not hurrying. A person who does not hurry when he could either is certain of the outcome or is gathering data more thoroughly than usual. Both options were unpleasant. The sensor on the lower slope went off at 2:14. Lee Jun-so woke a second before the signal. His body had already developed the habit of outrunning alarm. Got up, dressed, went out into the central hall. Yoo-jin was already there. She had not slept. Her shift had ended an hour earlier, but she had stayed by the monitor. She was looking at the thermal screen where 3 small outlines were moving along the lower slope slowly with stops. 3, she said without turning around. They are wearing thermal masks reducing infrared signature. Professional. Can they see the entrance? Not yet. They are moving along the old road. It leads farther left. Pause. But one of them has a directional device, a laser rangefinder or a magnified thermal imager. If he points it to the right, they will find it, in 20 minutes at most. He thought for a second. Then, wake Woo-jin. Already here, said a voice from the corridor. The firefighter came in dressed as if he had not gone to bed at all. Looked at the monitor. What is needed? He asked shortly. A smoke screen. If they use a thermal imager in our direction, the smoke will ruin the image. Woo-jin nodded without questions. He had smoke grenades, brought them with him from the fire depot in Wonju, 3 of them. He had said that he took them in case of signaling. Now it turned out in case of this. Going outside is dangerous, he said. Outside is 62. The emergency exit, said Lee Junso. The upper ridge. From there down the slope, the wind is western now. The smoke will go in the right direction. Wu Jin took the grenades. Yu Jin took the carbine. You stay, she told Lee Junso. No. You stay, she repeated. Not aggressively, simply as a fact she did not intend to discuss. You are the head. If you are gone, there are no decisions. There are 2 of us. We will manage. He looked at her. 5 minutes, he said. If you do not return, I am going out. We will return in 4. They left through the emergency exit. Lee Junso stayed by the monitor. 3 minutes, 40 seconds, that was exactly how long it took before the thermal camera showed a white cloud of smoke spreading across the western slope in a dense wall. The outlines of the 3 scouts stopped. One pointed the device into the smoke, not at the shelter. A few seconds. Then all 3 began to withdraw. Yujin and Wujin returned in exactly 4 minutes. Yujin stood by the wall, took off the mask. Wujin silently put the empty grenade away into his backpack. Clean, said Yujin. Saw that, Lee Junso answered. She looked at him quickly, checking whether he had remained where she had left him. He had remained. Something in her face relaxed slightly, not much, but he already knew how to read that. Good, she said, and went to finish sleeping. Wujin lingered, looked at the monitor where Son Sepyok's scouts had already disappeared from the camera. They will return, he said. Yes, with more people? Yes, you have a plan. Not a question, a statement. Wujin spoke to people the same way he put out fires, without anything extra, straight to the point. I do, said Lee Junso. Will you tell me when it is needed? I will. Wujin nodded and left. Lee Junso sat in the empty central hall, looked at the dark monitor. The system blinked quietly in the corner of his vision. Until temperature peak? 6 days. Shelter readiness? 94%. Group survival rating? 84%. 6 days until the peak. After the peak, Son Sepyok would begin to experience a shortage of resources. Their structure was built on seizure, not on production. When there was nothing left to seize, they would come for what they had already found. For the shelter, he had 6 days. On the morning of the 13th day, So-yeon found him by the agricultural block. He was standing at the entrance, watching Mirei and Minu water the spinach together. The boy held the watering can with both hands. Very seriously, Mirei showed him how much water for each row. There was something in that picture so ordinary and so out of place at the same time that he simply stood and watched. So-yeon stood beside him. Minu is recovering, she said. When they came, he had mild dehydration and heat stress. Now he is normal. Good. Hayarim is a good nurse. Pause. You were right to let them in. He looked at her. So-yeon was looking at Minu with that expression she never explained, but which appeared every time she saw the boy. Do you have children? He asked. No. Briefly, with no emotion on top. There was an opportunity. I did not choose at work. Time, always something else. Pause. Now I think that was a mistake. He was silent. That is not a complaint, she added at once. Just a fact. The apocalypse arranges priorities well. Yes. She turned to him, not sharply, calmly. Junso. I want to ask something, and I want an honest answer. All right, you behave as if you have already lived through this. Her voice was even, without pressure. Not like a person who is adapting, like a person who is remembering. Pause. This matters to me not as a curious person. It matters because I have to know what to rely on. If you have information about what is coming, I need to know it. As the medic responsible for the people here. He looked at her for a long time. So-yeon waited patiently, the way people wait for an analysis result. No pressure, no manipulation. She simply waited. I cannot explain how, he finally said. But yes, I know what will happen, approximately. Pause. Approximately means how exactly? The general outline, not the details. What will happen with Son Sepyok? They will come. 10 to 12 days after the peak when their supplies start running out. He spoke evenly, the way people speak about weather. Dong-hyun is a rational person. He will not attack a shelter simply out of greed. But when the choice becomes die or attack, he will attack. And will we survive? If we prepare correctly, You know how to prepare correctly, yes. So Yan looked at him for a second, then nodded slowly, accepting it. Good, she said. Then tell me, what do I need to prepare by then from the medical side? Injuries from blunt objects, possibly cuts. Probability of burns is low, they will not burn the shelter. They need it, he thought. One serious case is possible. So Yan did not ask who, simply nodded. Blood substitute, surgical kit, painkillers I have. Donor blood is the problem. We need to know everyone's blood types. Organize it. Already organizing it. In the agricultural block, Minu raised the watering can too high, and the water went not onto the spinach, but onto Mireille. She gasped, stepped back, then laughed. Minu froze with a guilty face. It is all right, Mireille was saying. The spinach is pleased too, look. The boy looked at the spinach. The spinach looked the same. Pleased? He asked uncertainly. Very, Mireille confirmed seriously. So Yan beside Li Junso said quietly, She is extraordinary. Yes, did you know that when you took her in? I suspected. So Yan smiled slightly, not widely, from the corner. For her, that was a lot. Good intuition, she said. She went to the medical block. Li Junso remained standing at the entrance to the agricultural block. Photosynthesis came out from behind the seedling shelf, sat at his feet, looked up, then turned away with the look of a cat that had made an important observation and kept it to itself. That same evening, Yujin went to Soyeon. Li Junso had not planned to hear it. He was simply walking past the medical block with tools for Daeun. The door was not tightly closed. Show me your blood type, Yujin's voice said. Second positive, Soyeon answered. And yours? First negative. Pause. Universal donor. I know. Then if someone needs blood at a critical moment, take mine. No discussion. Short silence. All right, said Soyeon. Thank you. Pause again. Longer. Have you known him long? Yujin asked. Her voice was neutral, the intonation even. Since the first day I was here. Soyeon did not change her tone. Just like you. You speak with him differently than with the others. You do too. Long silence. I am not talking about a problem, Yujin finally said. I am simply noticing. I am noticing too, said Soyeon. This is normal. Normal? We live in a tunnel under a mountain while outside it is 70 degrees. There is very little normal here in principle. Pause. Yujin. You are an intelligent person. I am an intelligent person. Let us not pretend we do not understand what we are talking about. Silence. I will not, Yujin finally said. Good. Soyeon's voice was even, without competition and without retreat. Then let each of us simply do her job. You guard, I treat. He decides. The rest is not our territory. The rest, Yujin repeated slowly. For now, the rest. A long pause. Fair, said Yujin. Footsteps, she was leaving. Li Junso stepped back from the door, leaned against the corridor wall. Outside 63 degrees. 3 days until the peak. He stood in the corridor with the tools for Daeun and thought that in his past life he had thought of nothing like this. Because in his past life there had been no time. Now there was, and it turned out to be harder than he had expected. The system gave no notifications on that matter, which was reasonable. On the 15th day, the peak came. The sensor showed 71 at 1340, then dropped a little, then rose again to 72 at 1500, then began to decline slowly. Slowly meant a few degrees a day. Until safe 3 weeks, no less. In the shelter, everyone gathered in the central hall without persuasion. They simply came, as if they had felt it. Minu was sleeping on a folding cot next to Hyrim. Daeun was sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall. With her eyes closed, she was not sleeping, simply resting from thinking. Woojin stood by the monitor looking at the numbers. Mireille held photosynthesis on her lap and said something quietly to him. Soyeon was reading. Yujin sat apart by the far wall, with the carbine across her knees, not because there was a threat, simply because she thought better that way. Outside 72, inside 13. The geothermal circuit was working. Li Junso looked at that difference, 59 degrees between death and life, separated by concrete and correctly laid pipes. and thought that in his past life there had been no such difference. Junso see, Mirei said quietly. Yes? Will we survive? Not hysterically calmly, the way people ask about the weather forecast. Yes, he said. All of us? Pause. We will try. Mirei nodded slowly, accepted the answer. Photosynthesis opened one eye, looked at Lee Junso, closed it again. On the 16th day, they knocked outside again. Not quietly, loudly, quickly, with pauses like a person losing consciousness between knocks. The temperature sensor showed 68. Not the peak, but enough that a person without protection in the open would not last even 15 minutes. Lee Junso looked at the thermal monitor. One outline at the entrance, weak body temperature lowered, which in such heat outside meant heat stroke, on the edge. Beside it, one more outline, smaller. Very small. He stood up. Where to? Yujin asked from the wall. I am opening. Wait. She was already beside him, looking at the monitor. One adult, one child, both in critical condition. I know, it may be bait. A child is not bait. Pause. You do not know that. No, he agreed. But a child. Yujin looked at the monitor for a second, then at him, then again at the monitor. I cover from inside, she said. If it is a trap, I shoot first. You do not object? I do not object. He opened the airlock. The woman literally fell inside, lost her balance the moment the door opened, and fell forward. Lee Junso caught her. She was light, dry, hot to the touch, 40 degrees of skin, not outside. Behind her, holding onto her jacket, a girl about 8 years old, small, with a burn on her cheek, looking at him with huge dark eyes, not crying. So Yan was already here. She had heard the airlock and came with the medical bag. Here, she said, taking the woman, quickly. The girl would not let go of the jacket. Go with her, Lee Junso told the girl quietly. She will not be left alone. The girl looked at him, then at So Yan, who was already laying the woman onto the medical table, speaking quickly and professionally. Let go of the jacket. Lee Junso remained in the airlock. Yujin stood beside him, carbine lowered. Clean? He asked. Clean. Pause. A child. Yes. This is hard, she said. Not weakness, a fact. Yes. She looked at the closed airlock door at the metal behind which there was heat of 68. In my past life, she said slowly, and he felt something inside contract. I had a partner. A good one. We served together for 3 years. He was silent, did not interrupt. When the collapse began, he had a family in Seoul. He went after them. Pause. I waited for him a week. He did not come back. Another pause. I do not know whether he reached them. He looked at her. Yujin was looking at the wall. Every time I see a child, she said quietly, I think, maybe they made it. Maybe somewhere there is a place like this. Maybe they are there. Maybe, he said. Yujin nodded. Once, slowly. Then straightened, picked up the carbine. I will go check the perimeter, she said evenly. Left. Lee Junso stood in the empty airlock and thought that, in his past life, Yujin had not been beside him. That he had not known this story about the partner. That each of them carried something of their own, and the shelter held not only on concrete and geothermal pipes. It held on this too. The woman's name was No Yoonji. 29 years old, former biochemist, had worked at a pharmaceutical institute in Seoul. The girl was her niece, Sora, 8 years old. Sora's parents had died in the first days of the collapse. So-yeon pulled Yoonji through with 3 hours of work, IV, cooling, pressure control. Not critical. If she had remained outside 20 more minutes, it would have been critical. By evening, Yoonji regained consciousness. The first thing she asked was on Sora. So-yeon said, with Mirei in the agricultural block, all right. Yoonji closed her eyes, exhaled, then opened them and looked at Lee Junso, who stood by the wall. Thank you, she said. No need. There is need. We walked for 2 days. I was no longer sure. She broke off. I am a biochemist. Am I useful? Yes, he said at once. That was the truth. In his past life, one of the main problems after the 3rd month had become diseases infections, vitamin deficiency, poisoning from poor quality water. A biochemist who knew how to work with basic reagents was a position he had not filled deliberately because he had not seen a suitable person. The system confirmed it without delay. New resident, no Yunji. Specialization, biochemistry, pharmacology, synthesis of basic medications. Value rating for the shelter, A group survival rating, 87%, 87. The system was growing together with the people. In the agricultural block at that moment, the following was happening. Sora sat on a low bench between the seedling shelves, looked at the sprouts. Mirai sat beside her, did not speak, simply remained beside her, which she did better than many words. Minu came on his own. He had heard that there was someone new here his age, stood in front of her. Sora looked at him. "Are you 8 too?" he asked. "Yes, I am 6, he said, "but I am almost 7. Sora looked at him for a second. "I am 8.5, she said. "Then you are older, yes." "All right," said Minu and sat down beside her. "Do you know that spinach grows faster if you talk to it?" "No, Mirai Nuna says so. She knows everything about plants." Sora looked at Mirai. Mirai nodded seriously. "I will teach you if you want." Sora looked at the seedlings, then quietly asked, "And sweet potato too?" "Sweet potato especially," said Mirai. In the evening, when everyone was already dispersing to their compartments, Lee Jun-so lingered in the central hall alone. Opened the system. Peak, passed, temperature declining, -2 degrees Celsius per day. Shelter readiness, 96%. Residents, 10, including 2 children. Group survival rating, 87%. Forecast of Sonsepyeok. Attack 8 to 12 days. Recommendation, begin preparation of the defensive perimeter. 10 people, 2 children. Mechanic, medic, sniper, agronomist, firefighter, pediatric nurse, biochemist. And himself. In his past life, he had made it to the 3rd month with 3 people, one of whom could only panic. He closed the interface. Footsteps in the corridor. Light, not Yujin. Hers are heavier despite the training. Mirai. She looked in through the door. Not sleeping? No, me neither. She came in, sat down on the floor just like that. She sometimes did it without warning. Yunji said that there is nothing left in Seoul. At all, I know. Scary? He thought honestly. It was. And now? Now it is not. Why? He looked at her. Mirai was sitting on the floor of the shelter's central hall, braid thrown over her shoulder, attentive eyes. She always looked exactly like that, as if what she was being told was the most important thing at that moment. Because there is something here to defend, he said. Mirai thought that over. Good answer, she said seriously. Then quieter. Junso-si. Yes? Do you think about us? She was not looking at him, she was looking at the floor. About all of us. As a group. It shows. Pause, but sometimes I think, do you think about someone specific? He was silent. Mirai raised her eyes, no manipulation, no calculation. She simply looked. I am not asking you to answer, she said. I just want you to know, we all see it, each in our own way. A short pause. Photosynthesis sees it too, but he is silent. The cat, somewhere in the depths of the agricultural block, did not comment on this statement in any way. Mirai stood up, straightened her clothes. Good night, Junso-si. Good night, Mirai. She left. Lee Jun-so sat in the silence of the central hall, and the shelter hummed around him evenly, confidently, like something alive. Outside, the temperature was falling. 8 days until Sonsepyeok. 8 days is a lot if you know what to do. Lee Jun-so knew. The next morning, he gathered everyone in the central hall, not over dinner, not in passing. Officially, with the map on the wall and a list in his hand. The children were with Hi-Rim in the living compartment. He had asked her to stay with them. She understood without explanation. 9 people looked at the map. Sonsepyeok will come in 8 to 12 days, he said. Not because they want to kill, because they have nothing to feed their people with. They have no production, only seizure. When there is nothing left to seize, they will come here. How many of them? Wu Jin asked. 30 to 40 combat capable, plus dependents those whom they feed, about the same number. We are 9. Da Yun spoke without panic, simply counted. 10 with high rim, she is also hands. 9 against 40, bad arithmetic, said Wu Jin. Yes, that is why we do not fight 40 against 9. Everyone waited. Li Jun-so unfolded the second sheet. The plan of the terrain around the shelter. 3 approaches to the entrance. The lower road, the eastern slope, the western ridge. The emergency exit, the northern slope, concealed. The lower road is their main route. That is where they will come. Donghyun is a rational commander. He will not divide his people on unfamiliar terrain. They will move compactly. Compactly along the open road, said Yujin. She was already looking at the map with that special gaze with which snipers look at terrain, not as landscape, but as geometry. The western ridge gives a view over 400 meters of road. If I am there? You are there, he confirmed, but you do not shoot first. What do you mean you do not shoot first? We do not kill people who have not attacked yet. Yujin looked at him. If they come, they will attack. We do not know that exactly. You yourself said I said they would come. I did not say the scenario cannot be changed. Pause. You want negotiations? So Yeon asked. I want Donghyun to have a choice. Lee Jun-so looked at the map. If we attack first, he has no choice. His people will fight to the death. If we show strength without the first shot, he has a choice. A rational person chooses not to die. Woojin nodded slowly. Demonstration, not attack. Exactly. That works if we have something to demonstrate, said Da-eun. Do we? By then we will, said Lee Jun-so. The next 8 days were the busiest since construction began. Woojin took the outer perimeter upon himself. He worked with the same calm with which probably he had put out fires methodically, without fuss. Stretched wires on 3 levels of the lower slope. Not barriers, signal lines, but for a person in the dark, an unexpected thing. Prepared smoke positions at 4 points with the right wind, the smoke could cover the lower road completely, depriving attackers of orientation. Does not kill, he told Lee Jun-so, showing the scheme, but disorients and frightens. People fear smoke instinct. Good. One more thing. Woojin pointed to a spot at the right edge of the road. There is an old drain pipe here. It goes into the rock. If someone lies there with a flare, it looks as if fire is coming out of the rock. Psychologically creepy. Lee Jun-so looked at the scheme. You thought about this long ago. From the first day I saw the terrain, Woojin said simply. Da-eun worked on a different task. Lee Jun-so gave her a list. She did not argue, simply went to the workshop. On the 3rd day, she brought the result. 4 directional floodlights converted from generator equipment. Not a weapon light. Directed into an attacker's eyes from 400 meters at night, that is 15 seconds of complete blindness. Does it work? He asked. I tested it on Woojin. Pause. He did not get offended. I have seen worse, Woojin said from the corner. Yoonji spent 3 days in the laboratory, the small nook that Lee Jun-so had set aside for chemistry, when he realized that there would be a biochemist. She did not ask anyone what to do, studied the stock of reagents herself, made a list of possibilities herself, came with the result herself. Tear gas, she said. Not a military formula, I cannot reproduce that without equipment, but an irritant based on capsaicin in a concentrated aerosol. Range about 20 meters with wind. Effect tears, burning, temporary loss of combat capability. How much can you make? With current supplies, 18 canisters. Enough. So Yeon prepared the operating block silently. She had been doing it all week, between other work, methodically, the way people prepare for a planned operation. Laying things out, checking, removing the unnecessary. He came in sometimes. She lifted her eyes, said, all right, and returned to work. On the 5th day, she said, I want to know the retreat plan. If something goes wrong? Yes, emergency exit, northern slope. Children first, then the wounded. Rally point the old coal watchman's hut 2 kilometers higher up. I showed the route to everyone. Who goes last? He was silent. Jun-so, she said. Who goes last? I do. So-yeon looked at him with the expression he had already learned to read. Not agreement and not objection. Something third. Then she said quietly, do not let the situation reach retreat. I will try. Not, I will try. Do not let it. He looked at her. So-yeon held the gaze directly without anything extra. All right, he said. On the 6th evening, he climbed the western ridge. Not on business, he simply needed air. Outside, it was 44. Already it was possible to go out in heavy clothes for a short time, with water if quickly. Not comfortable, but possible. He stood on the ridge, looked down into the valley. Darkness, rare light somewhere far away, about 8 kilometers, a fire or several was glowing. Son Sepyok, most likely. They were not hiding. Footsteps behind him. Yu Jin. He recognized her before he turned around. She climbed up, stood beside him, looked at the same lights. On watch? He asked. No, I came for you. Why? I saw that you had gone. Pause. I do not like it when you go without warning. I told you I needed air. You did not say. You simply went out. He was silent. She was right. They stood beside each other in silence for a long time. By Eugene standards, that was normal. She knew how to be silent beside someone better than most people knew how to speak. The valley below was dark. Somewhere there were roads on which, in 2 days, people with white circles on their jackets would come. Eugene, he said. Yes, the partner you mentioned. He was not looking at her, he was looking down. Did you look for him? A long pause. No, quietly. I knew that if I went, I would not find him. And if I did not find him, I would stop functioning. Another pause. That sounds cold. No, it does sound that way. But it is the truth that is how I work. If I allow myself to hope for something specific, then when it is not there, everything falls apart. So I do not hope for anything specific, only for what is in my hands. He turned to her. Eugene was looking at the valley, a clear profile in the darkness, hair tied back as always. There was something in her very even not unfeeling, but like a well-calibrated instrument. Precision instead of armor. What is in your hands now? He asked. She was silent for a second. The carbine, she said. Yunji's 18 canisters. Da-Eun's 4 floodlights. Wu Jin's smoke. Pause. And you. He did not answer at once. I am not a tool, he said. I know, she said, and added more quietly, almost to herself. That is the problem. Silence. Lee Jun-so looked at her, at that profile in the darkness, at the hands gripping the carbine with a habitual hold, at the 3 seconds of vulnerability she had allowed herself in one phrase. Yu Jin. Do not, she said. Not sharply, simply. Not now. After. After what? After this is over. She was looking at the valley again. I know how to wait. He knew how to read people. It had been in him since his past life, strengthened by the sleepless one and by years of watching how people behave under pressure. Eugene now was like a stretched cable, not snapping, but vibrating. All right, he said, after. She nodded once, the way a case is closed. They stood on the ridge for another 10 minutes. In silence. Near each other without touching, but close enough to hear each other's breathing. Then Eugene said, Tomorrow I want to walk the road from below. Check the points. We will go together. We will. They descended back down. The hot air pressed on their shoulders, 44 cooling slowly. At the entrance to the shelter, Eugene stopped. Jun-so. Yes, afterward I will ask about what you are not saying. About where you know all this from. Pause, and you will answer. Not a request, not a threat. Simply that is how it will be. He looked at her. I will answer, he said. Eugene opened the door and went inside. The day of the attack came on the 10th day after the peak. The sensors went off at 2140 still light. Donghyun had chosen the time wisely. At dusk there is enough visibility to orient oneself, but not enough for a sniper on the ridge to work at full strength. A rational man. Lee Jun-so raised the group without alarm, simply entered the central hall and said, Time. Everyone knew what to do. Hyarim led the children to the far compartment, the deepest one, with the closed door. Sora took Minu by the hand without words. He went. Yoonji took position by the emergency exit, 18 canisters in the bag. She had received the briefing from Eugene 3 days earlier. Da-Eun switched the floodlights to combat mode, 4 points, the remote control in her hands. Woojin went to the lower slope in advance an hour before the signal. Quietly, as he knew how, took position by the drain pipe. So Yan remained in the medical block, the door open, everything ready. Eugene had been on the ridge since 6 in the evening. Lee Jun-so went out to the lower road alone. Son Sepyok was moving compactly just as he had predicted. 32 people he had time to count on the thermal monitor before going out. Dong Hyun in front, without a weapon in his hands, everything as the last time. A friendly gesture. Lee Jun-so stood in the middle of the road. Outside it was 42 hot but bearable in heavy clothes. The evening air motionless, the mountains around dark, quiet. Dong Hyun stopped at 50 meters, saw him, smiled with that same professional smile. Decided to talk. I did, Lee Jun-so confirmed. Changed your mind? No. The smile faded a little. Then why did you come out? So that you make the right choice, Lee Jun-so said evenly. Not because I want to persuade you, because I want you to understand. You have a choice, and I am giving you time to make it. We have made our choice, said Dong Hyun. We need your shelter. No, said Lee Jun-so. You need food and water. The shelter is a means, not a goal. It is the same thing. Not the same. You can get access to resources without taking it. Pause. If we make an agreement. Dong Hyun looked at him a little longer than before. Something in him shifted not much, but Lee Jun-so saw it. Terms, he finally asked? Not now. Right now the question is, did you come to talk or not? Silence. Then from behind, from the darkness at Dong Hyun's back, someone shouted, Commander, what are we waiting for? Dong Hyun did not turn, but something in his posture changed pressure from the group behind him. 32 people who were waiting and for whom Dong Hyun's cool head was needed less than food. We do not need negotiations, he said, more quietly than before. Dong Hyun, Lee Jun-so said just as quietly, for him alone, you are an intelligent man. I said that. Look at the ridge. Dong Hyun raised his eyes. On the western ridge, 400 meters higher, a small silhouette, motionless, with a carbine. One position, said Dong Hyun. Look at the slope. The slope to the left was dark. Woo Jin was not moving, but Dong Hyun was a professional. He knew how to read terrain. Looked for 10 seconds. Then, there is someone there. Yes, and, said Lee Jun-so, if I raise my hand, switches on the floodlights. 4 of them directed at your column. 800 lumens each, straight into the eyes. After that, Yoonji comes out through the emergency exit and works from the flanks. And Woo Jin lights the smoke. He raised his hand not all the way, just a movement. 2 floodlights flashed. Once a short demonstration. The first rows of Sonsep-yok recoiled. Someone cursed. Lee Jun-so lowered his hand. This is not an attack, he said. This is a display. The next time it will not be a display. Dong Hyun stood there. Looked at him. In his eyes, not fear, something more complicated. A man reassessing the situation in real time. You do not have that many people, he finally said. No, but we have positions, knowledge of the terrain, and time. You have neither the first, nor the second, nor the third. Long silence. From behind again another voice, nervous. Commander Tico, said Dong Hyun. Not loudly, simply in such a way that they fell silent. He looked at Lee Jun-so. The latter waited. Terms, Dong Hyun finally said. Speak. Lee Jun-so exhaled, not from relief, from the fact that the first step had been made. Tomorrow, in daylight. 2 of us without weapons on either side. Pause. I will give you what you need, not the shelter. Knowledge of how to survive independently. That is not what we need. That is what you actually need. A captured shelter feeds you for a month. Your own production for years. Dong Hyun was silent. Tomorrow, Lee Jun-so repeated. A long pause. Tomorrow, said Dong Hyun. He turned to his people, a short gesture. The column began to withdraw. Without words, without haste, with the same discipline with which it had come. Lee Jun-so stood in the middle of the road and watched them disappear into the darkness. Then footsteps from above, quick. Yoojin was coming down from the ridge, not running, but quickly. She came out onto the road, stood beside him, looked into the darkness after Sonsep-yok. They left, she said. They left. You convinced Dong Hyun. Only until tomorrow for now. That is already something. Pause. You took a risk. Yes, alone, on the road, without a weapon. It was necessary. I know, she said. That does not mean I liked watching it. He turned to her. Yoojin was looking not at him into the darkness where the people with white circles had gone. But something in her voice was different, not anxiety. Something personal. Yu Jin. Not now, she said, and again that not now, which with her had already become almost a ritual. You said after. This is still not after. A short pause. Tomorrow negotiations. After the negotiations after. He looked at her. All right, he said. They went back, side by side, in silence. At the entrance, everyone was waiting for them, Da-eun with the remote in her hands, Woojin with the smell of smoke on his jacket, Yoonji with the bag of canisters. So Yeon stood a little behind. They left? Da-eun asked. They left. Negotiations tomorrow? Yes. Da-eun nodded, put the remote into her pocket with the look of a person who had closed a work matter. Woojin said only, the smoke lay well. Good, Lee Jun-so agreed. So-yeon looked at him silently with that expression he already knew how to read. Then said quietly, so that only he heard, you did not let it come to retreat. I did not. She nodded once, then went inside. Lee Jun-so stood at the entrance last as always, looked at the dark valley, at the rare lights in the distance, at the sky above the mountains. Outside 41 degrees, falling. The shelter behind his back hummed evenly. 10 people inside, 2 children, 1 cat. And tomorrow a conversation that could change not only the 9 of them. The system blinked in the corner of his vision. Group survival rating, 91%. New achievement, first bloodless conflict. Bonus, plus 300 construction points. Unlocked, second level expansion. He closed the interface and went inside. Dong-hyun came alone. Lee Jun-so appreciated that. To come alone to negotiations with people who yesterday had stood with a carbine on the ridge that was either confidence or something close to despair. Judging by the way Dong-hyun walked along the road evenly without haste, hands visible, it was confidence. Or a very well-learned imitation of it. They sat in the open air by a large stone on the lower slope, in the shadow of the rock. 40 degrees, tolerable. Yoojin was on the ridge. Dong-hyun knew that did not object. A rational man. I am listening, said Dong-hyun. Lee Jun-so took out 2 sheets written by hand, at night, while the others slept. You have 40 combat-capable people and about the same number of dependents, he began. The captured resources are running out. There are no new sources. Everything that could be taken within a radius of 40 kilometers has already been taken or burned. Pause. In 3 weeks, you will start losing people not in battles. Dong-hyun said nothing, but did not object either. I have an agronomist, Lee Jun-so continued. She knows hydroponics cultivation without soil, only water and light. Sweet potato, spinach, soy. With proper setup, a stable harvest every 3 weeks. He placed the first sheet before Dong-hyun. This is a blueprint of a basic installation. Materials in any ruined shopping center. LED panels, PVC pipes, a pump. A week of work. Dong-hyun took the sheet. Read slowly. Second water, Lee Jun-so continued. There are underground sources at 3 points within a radius of 20 kilometers from here. The second sheet. Depth, rocks, drilling method. The drilling rig can be rented or stolen, to be honest. There is an abandoned one in Wonju. Dong-hyun raised his eyes. Why are you giving this? He said. Not a question, an attempt to understand the logic. Because if you start dying, your people will come here again. Lee Jun-so looked straight at him. And then I will have no choice except to do what I do not want to do. You do not want to kill us, no. Why? Pause. Because you are not monsters, he said. You are people who ended up in a situation where the only model known to them is seizure. I am offering another model. Dong-hyun looked at him for a long time. Then at the sheets in his hands. Then at him again. You are too intelligent for one man in a post-apocalypse, he said quietly. I got lucky with people, Lee Jun-so answered. Silence. Dong-hyun folded both sheets neatly. Put them away. Sat there, looking at the valley below at the same thing Lee Jun-so had looked at from the ridge last night. I have a man, he finally said. A former agronomist. An old man, 70 years old. We took him with us because he knew how to grow something in a garden. Pause. He is not a combat unit. To my people, he seems like ballast. He is not ballast. I know, quietly. That is why I did not abandon him. Lee Jun-so looked at Dong Hyun, at this man with the white circle on his jacket, whom he had considered a rational cold commander. What is his name? He asked. Park Il-soo. Pause. He wants to work with the soil, even in this. Then let him work, said Lee Jun-so. Dong Hyun looked at him. You are offering to take him? I am offering to take him and 2 or 3 of your people, those who want to build, not seize. They will help set up the installation in your camp. Mireille will teach them. Pause. In a month, you feed yourselves, and in return, non-aggression. And if other groups come, aggressive ones, warning. Long silence. Dong Hyun stood up slowly, the way tired people rise. I need to talk to my own, he said. Of course, it will take a day. Good. Dong Hyun went down the road. Halfway, he stopped without turning around. If you were in my situation, you would have done the same as I did. Probably, Lee Jun-so agreed. That is not condemnation. Just a fact, I know. Dong Hyun left. Yu Jin came down from the ridge 20 minutes later, waited until Dong Hyun disappeared from sight. Heard? Lee Jun-so asked. No. Pause, but I saw. By the way, he left not as before an attack. Not before an attack. Yu Jin nodded. Park Il-soo, she said. 70 years old, agronomist, you heard? A little. The wind. She stood beside him, looking at the road. Will you take him? If he comes. Silence. Then Yu Jin said unexpectedly, without introduction, You took people by the principle of usefulness. Mechanic, medic, sniper. Pause. A 70-year-old agronomist is not the same logic. No. Then the logic changed. He looked at the road. Maybe the original logic was not the only one, he said. Yu Jin cast him a quick glance. That is almost a confession, she said. Almost. She smiled a little, just a little. Not widely, just the corner of her lips. After, she reminded herself under her breath, and went to the shelter. While Lee Jun-so was at the negotiations, inside something happened that he did not see. So-yeon came to Yu Jin, not to the living compartment, to the observation post at the entrance, where Yu Jin had been standing from the first minute while he had gone alone to Dong Hyun. Brought 2 mugs tea from Mireille's supplies. Set one beside Yu Jin. Silently. Yu Jin took the mug also without words. They stood by the monitor. Outside Lee Jun-so on the stone in the shadow of the rock, opposite Dong Hyun. The picture was blurry, thermal, but 2 people were sitting, talking, not shooting. He will manage, said So-yeon. I know. Then why are you watching without taking your eyes away? Pause. Habit, said Yu Jin. So-yeon drank tea. Yu Jin drank tea. Yu Jin, So-yeon finally said. I want to tell you something, not as a rival, simply as a person who is also watching. Speak. You know how to be beside him in a way I do not. Quietly, evenly. I know how to understand. You know how to be present. Those are different things, and both are needed. Yu Jin was silent. I am not surrendering, So-yeon added. I am speaking honestly. I value honesty, said Yu Jin. I know. Silence. Long, but not hostile. The kind of silence that exists between 2 intelligent people who have said something important to one another and do not demand an immediate answer. So-yeon, Yu Jin finally said. Yes? If he is wounded, you will do everything possible. That is not a question. No, Yu Jin agreed. I am simply saying it aloud. So-yeon looked at her with that expression that sometimes appeared over her professional evenness. We will both do everything possible, she said. Yu Jin nodded. They finished their tea. Park Il-soo came the next day. With him 2 young men from Sonsepiok, silent and wary, and a small bundle of seeds. The old man carried it under his jacket, as the most valuable thing. Mireille met him at the entrance, looked at the seeds. What is that? She asked quietly. Zucchini, said the old man. Tomato? Pepper. Pause. I carried them all the way from Chuncheon. Mireille raised her eyes to him with the expression with which she looked at a good harvest. Come, she said. I will show you the agricultural block. The old man went after her, not quickly, but confidently. The 2 young men exchanged glances and went after him. So Ra, peeking out from the living compartment, looked at the old man. "Grandpa," she suddenly said. Everyone turned around. "Not my grandpa," she clarified seriously, "just similar." Pause. "May I go look at the seeds too?" Park Il-soo looked at her for a long time, with the expression elderly people have when they see a child in a place where children were not expected. "You may," he said. Sora walked beside him. Lee Jun-so stood at the entrance and watched them go to the agricultural block, a 70-year-old agronomist with seeds under his jacket, an 8-year-old girl with a burn on her cheek. The system blinked. New residents accepted. Group survival rating 93%. Shelter network forming. Network. He had not asked to build it. It was building itself. In the evening of that day, when everything had calmed down a little, Donghyun had left with an agreement. 2 of his people had stayed to work. Park Il-soo was sitting with Mireille over the blueprints of the expanded agricultural block. Lee Jun-so went out to the emergency exit. Alone. Sat on a stone by the northern slope. Opened the system. Survival rating 93%. Residents 13. Shelter network 1 partner node. Until stable phase 18 days. 18 days until the stable phase. Then long, slow recovery. Years, not months. But they would live to the beginning of those years. In his past life, he had not lived to it. He closed the interface. Footsteps 3 pairs almost at the same time. He did not turn around, recognize them by sound. After 3 months in one tunnel, you begin to know people by their footsteps better than by their voices. Yujin to the left, almost silent, betrayed only by fine gravel. So-yeon to the right at an even step, heel slightly heavier than toe. Mireille from behind, light, quick, stopping suddenly. They came out almost at the same time, and, judging by how all 3 slowed slightly on seeing one another, each had thought she would come alone. Pause. Lee Jun-so sat on the stone with his back to them and looked at the valley. "I came first," said Mireille. "You came last," said Yujin. "Chronologically, I came out first." "That is not the same thing." "That is a debatable question, Mireille," said So-yeon calmly. "What?" "Quiet." Mireille fell silent. Lee Jun-so slowly turned around. 3 faces in the sunset light 41 degrees, and the sunset was still beautiful. The mountains knew how to do that. Yujin with a carbine over her shoulder, with that expression that meant, "I said after, and this is after." So-yeon with her hands folded, her gaze direct and warm at the same time, which she managed only here, only in these last weeks. Mireille with her braid disheveled, dirt from the agricultural block on her cheek, looking at him with that solemn expression of hers. He looked at them. "You all came," he said. "Yes," said So-yeon. "Why?" Pause. "You are sitting alone," said Mireille simply. "When you sit alone, it means you are thinking about something heavy." Pause. "It is our business, too. We are here after all." Yujin added. Nothing simply came and stood beside him. That was enough, and everyone knew it. So-yeon a little to the side, as always, with that delicacy that was her language. Then quietly, only for him. "Were you thinking about the past?" "A little," he said. "Is there something bad there?" A long pause. "It did not have this there," he said. So-yeon looked at him for a second, understanding, then turned away to the sunset. The 4 of them sat on the northern slope, he on the stone, Mireille beside him, hugging her knees with her arms, So-yeon a little to the right. Yujin standing, as always standing, because sitting is harder for her than standing. The valley below was growing dark. Somewhere far away the small fire of Sonsepyok's camp. "Peaceful now, or almost peaceful." "Jun Sosi," said Mireille. "Yes, tell us something." Pause. Not about the plan. Not about the system. Just something. He thought for a second. "In my past life," he said, "I knew how to do only one thing well. Build. And I thought that was enough. That building was the main thing." "And now?" So-yeon asked. He looked at the valley. "Now I think that building is only walls." Pause. "What is inside is something else. Silence." Mireille laid her head on his shoulder just like that, without announcement, the way one lays their head on the shoulder of a close person. He did not move away. So-yeon looked at the sunset. Yujin stood beside them and was silent but a little closer than usual. Photosynthesis appeared from nowhere. He knew how to do that. Sat on the stone next to Lee Junso and stared into the valley with the look of a cat who had an opinion about what was happening but did not intend to share it. Photosynthesis came, Mirai announced solemnly. We can see that, said Yujin. Then everything is all right, said Mirai. He does not like bad places. So Yan did not answer, but the corner of her lips was touched by that rare smile. The sunset was dimming. The temperature was falling 38, 37. For the first time in a month, the evening was almost bearable. Lee Junso sat on the stone with the cat on his right and 3 women beside him, looked at the valley they had not lost, and thought about the 18 days until the stable phase. Thought about Da-Yun, who right now was fixing something inside with the look of a person who liked that more than talking. About Woojin, methodically checking the perimeter. About Hae Rim, who was bathing Minu and reading something to him. About Sora falling asleep beside Park Il-soo, who was telling her about tomatoes. About Yunji in the laboratory with formulas. 13 people, 2 children, 1 cat, and a future that he could not see completely even with the memory of his past life, even with the system. A future that was being built not out of calculations, but out of what was happening every day in this tunnel. The system blinked one last time for that day. New achievement. The shelter has become a home. Bonus, not awarded. Note, some things are not measured in points. He looked at that notification. For the first time in all that time, he smirked. What? Yujin asked. She had noticed. Nothing, he said. The system sometimes says intelligent things. The system, Yujin repeated, with the intonation of a person who had not forgotten that that conversation was still ahead. After, he said. After, she agreed. Mirai opened one eye a little. You both have been saying after for a very long time already. Mirai, said Soyeon. What? Quiet. But quiet. Mirai closed her eye. The valley was growing dark below. The mountains were silent. The shelter hummed behind their backs evenly, confidently, alive. Lee Junso looked ahead. 18 days, and then everything else.